Narcotics Anonymous. Where we have all them righteous meetings.
You may disagree, but I don't want it on this tape. And that is, I'm an alcoholic and an addict. And if you're a member of NA, you're an addict. You may also be an alcoholic, but that's one of the things we're trying to alter and try to change, because it's causing a lot of confusion among a lot of people. Okay? So I think if we can remember just that one thing, we're talking about NA, we're talking about our recovery, we're talking about our freedom and the way we handle it. And I think there could be, depending on whatever way it happens to be working out, as naturally as possible, whatever way that Doug wants to hold the meeting or run the meeting or direct the meeting, to bring out the fact that these 12 steps are what we use. I think that most of us are well aware that the first 3 steps are more or less conditional steps. I'll just run through briefly just the way I look at them sometimes so that you can have some idea of what we're trying to do here. The first 3 steps are more or less conditional steps. And I think if you look into yourself, you'll find out that they were the first 3 in the beginning that sort of made you think. Which is one of the purposes of our whole fellowship, to make you think. But the first step, of course, we can only come in as a honest, desiring member by taking that first step. So this is one of the important parts. Steps, of course, 4, 5, and 6 are more or less the steps where we go into ourselves and see what we have to work with, see who we are, what we are, where we're going now, that we are able to live in freedom. And then, of course, after the 7th step, we're beginning into relationships. How do we deal with those things in society, those things among our family and our friends that are being triggered sometimes in the past to make us use it? How do we relate to these things so that we may correct it and keep our freedom and enlarge on it and grow with it? And then, of course, the 10th, 11th, and 12th steps, I think most of us do accept them as working steps. These are the steps most of us use every day to work. I always generally like to say that the 10th step is a sort of an ongoing step, or an outgoing would be a better, ongoing step. This is the one I keep on going with, I look at myself any time during the day, and I get in a bind of some kind, and I can make a decision. If I'm wrong, I can admit it. If I'm right, I can hang on to what I think is good. 11, of course, is that ingoing step. Each of us in our own way finds our own methods of prayer and meditation in order to help ourselves. This is the fundamentally individual part of our program. And that is the ingoing step. And of course, the number 12 is the outgoing step. This is what carries us out into society, out with other addicts, into the fellowship as a whole, trying to carry the message to other addicts, no matter where we find them or how they come to us. And then we try to practice these principles in all our affairs. Part of practicing these principles in all our affairs is what we're trying to do today. We're trying to carry the message to others. No matter how this will be used educationally or otherwise, we do have a source of help here ourselves. It will give us a chance that we haven't had for a long time of spreading the fact out that NA is not only a program for addicts, but it is the program that is working for most throughout the world. And we are truly an international body now, and we're spreading rapidly. And I want you all to remember that sort of, because sometimes we forget, we get closed in and we say, well, this is the only place that all this is going on. It isn't. Where we're more rapidly growing all the time. We tell you just as members, just throw this in, that we put out over 100 starter kits in the last 60 days. You might not want to believe me, but that happens to be true.
Yeah.
That's the way it's going. So maybe that'll give you a little lift to sort of keep you on the ball as far as this tight thing we're trying to do. So I think it might be a good idea if Doug would run this through maybe about 10 minutes, just a quick 10 minutes to give us an idea of what he's going to do. And then he's going to hang up that sign so it will fall on my head. I know. Okay, Steve.
Okay, welcome to the regular Narcotics Anonymous meeting at Survivors Club Saturday morning. I'd like to start this meeting with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Welcome. I'd like to start the meeting as we normally do. Everyone just go around the room so we can get to know each other. My name is Douglas and I'm a drug addict.
Hi, Doug.
I'm Fawn, I'm an addict.
Hi, Fawn.
I'm Sue, I'm an addict.
Hi, Sue.
I'm Jimmy, I'm married.
Hi, Jimmy.
Betty, an addict.
Hi, Betty.
My name's Ken, I'm an addict.
Hi, Ken.
My name's Henry and I'm an addict.
Hi, Henry.
My name's Hank and I'm an addict.
Hi, Hank.
My name is Bob and I'm an addict.
Hi, Bob.
My name is Phil, I'm an addict.
Hi, Phil.
I'm David, I'm an addict.
Hi, David.
Daryl, I'm an addict.
Hi, Daryl. My name is John, and I'm an addict.
My name is Dana and I'm an addict.
Hi, David.
Hi, Dana.
All right. Very nice day today. Okay, as is a custom at our meetings in Southern California, we read excerpts from the pamphlet of Narcotics Anonymous. Can I get a volunteer this morning to read who is an addict? All right.
My name's Fawn, I'm an addict.
Hi, Fawn.
Who is an addict? Most of us do not have to think twice about this question. We know. Our whole life and thinking is centered in drugs in one form or another, the getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. We use to live and live to use. Very simply, an addict is a man or woman whose life is controlled by drugs. We are people in the grip of a continuing and progressive illness whose ends are always the same: jails, institutions, and death.
Thank you. Okay, as also is a custom, can I get a volunteer to read how it works?
My name's Ken, an addict. How it works. If you want what we have to offer and are willing to make the effort to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. These are suggested only, but they are the principles that made our recovery possible. 1. We admitted that we were powerless over the addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We were entirely ready to have God remove all those defects of character. 7. We humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. We made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends with them all. 9. We made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. We continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of those steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. This sounds like a big order, and we can't do it all at once. We didn't become addicts in one day, so remember, easy does it. There is one thing more than anything else that will defeat us in our recovery. This is an attitude of indifference or intolerance towards spiritual principles. Although there are no musts in NA, there are 3 things that seem indispensable. These are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness to try. With these we are well on our way. We feel that our approach to the problem of addiction is completely realistic for the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. We feel that our ways is practical. One addict can best understand and help another addict. We believe that the sooner we face our problems within our society in everyday living, just that much faster do we become acceptable, responsible, and productive members of that society. The only way to keep from getting or continuing a habit is not to take that first fix, pill, or drink. If you are like us, you know that one is too many and 1,000 never enough. We put great emphasis on this, for we know that when we use drugs in any form or substitute one for another, we realize our addictions all over again or create a new one. The substitution of alcohol has caused a great many addicts to form a new addiction pattern, which in its progression brings as many problems as before. We seem to forget that alcohol is one of the oldest known drugs. It would appear that we are people with addictive personalities who are strongly susceptible to alcoholic addictions.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Loosen up, huh? Hey. Come on. Come on.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, get loose. Okay, I would like to have a, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to have somebody volunteer. Bob, would you please read the 12th edition of Narcotics Anonymous? Thank you.
My name is Bob, and I'm an addict.
Hi, Bob.
We keep what we have only with vigilance. And just as freedom for the individual comes in 12 steps, so freedom for the group springs from our traditions. As long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that will tear us apart, all will be well. 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on NA unity. 2. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop using. 4. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or NA as a whole. 5. Each group has but one primary purpose, to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. 6. An NA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the NA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems with money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7. Every NA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Narcotics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. NA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible for those they serve. 10. NA has no opinion on outside issues, hence the NA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all of our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
All right.
Thank you. That's the biggest of the biggest. All right. Okay. Now we got the reading out of the way. All right. I'd like to start this meeting off with the suggestion that this be a discussion meeting today, centered around the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous and how they work for you and how they work in your life, and in that 12 step, how we can better offer this to other people. You know, I think the most beautiful part of this program is that little phrase in our pamphlet, you know, that doesn't very often get read in meetings, because it's not part of the reading material, that says, in desperation we sought help from each other. you know. It's like, when it gets down to it, you know, whatever you believe in, whatever your concepts, whatever you come here with, it all seems to boil down to that simple statement, you know. In desperation, we start helping from each other, and the most beautiful part about it is that it's here, you know. We have it to give today, and I don't know, I'd sort of like to just run this on a volunteer basis. If you like to share this afternoon, if you have something possibly of this last week, some experience with the step, if you could possibly share that with us today. You know, many of us have been here a lot longer than others, and a lot of the living experiences that we go through and apply this program in our lives, yet unknown to those other people, we can share that today, you know. Would anybody like to volunteer to share a little bit with us today?
I'll start it off. There's a couple of things that go into my mind, you know. It just looks like, in a way, I'm out of place, you know, in terms of, fellow people look too good, you know. You got clean faces and shine shoes and cars parked on the parking lot and everything. Barbara, I think one of the things I think I have difficulty with, you know, I have to always go back to that first step and understand what addiction is about. And I have to, you know, the totality of what addiction is all about. And it took a long time for me to come to grips with the total personality of me being addicted. It has very little to do with whatever chemicals I may have used in order to arrive here in desperation, that desperation you're talking about. It took a long time for me to understand what addiction was about, really. You know, I read the steps 1,000 times, but I never really knew the true impact of what my addiction was about, you know. It's constantly creeping up, you know, when things of a nature of, I get that gratification or that feeling good or it looks good and I want to run with it. You know, I'm still into that. You know, and I catch myself, well, here I go again. You know, running crazy because something made me feel good, or, you know, it looked good and it's worthwhile running it to the ground until I start getting, you know, I actually get sick about it. You know, not, you know, it's kind of, I relate it to the, you know, the addiction to the drug, but it's hard to understand sometimes, you know, to really get to that point of how far-reaching it is. You know, I've seen it with the money thing, I've seen it with the sex thing, I've seen it with, you know, the drug thing, I've seen it with just, if it looks good, feel good, let's go, you know, man, run with it. And in some ways, you know, it came up, you're talking about cropping up last week, you know, I've gotten to the place where I've developed a little affluence. There's no other way to say it, you know. But I think about, at the same time, I become very tight-fisted. I still very selfish. I become, a lot of the negative things that go along with it. It's not that it's not what people are doing out there, it's just how it affects me in terms of how off-center or how crazy I can get. How, you know, all-encompassing this here, my disease of addiction is. I fully understand it in a sense of saying I can see it unfolding. Sometimes I don't see it happening because it's very subtle. You just say, well, this is nice, you know, I enjoy this, and I just want a little, you know, a little taste of good things of life, and so I'll get off into it. You know? And sometimes I have to just remind me continually that that first step, you know, my life is still unmanageable in many ways, that my addiction is all encompassing. It has very little to do with whatever chemical I use. That I get overly involved, overly obsessive about it, want to, you know, just go, you know, like, do it, baby, you know, until I get the pain. You know, I see some of the things that are happening around me that are painful where it affects other people. And very often it becomes pain for me seeing them suffer, or seeing how I affect them. How I affect them. Not their reaction to it, but just how I affect them. And it kind of reminds me once again, you know, like I still got a lot of work to do. Regardless of how long I've been around here, these little subtleties that kind of seemingly creep in with everything just sailing along, you know, just beautiful, and then all of a sudden, that's what's happening. So, I think, you know, one of the things we come in here with, I think we talk about many things, but I think when we get to understand the true nature, or when I get to understand my true nature of my disease, how all-encompassing it is. It's the whole me. You know, my very being is just addictive. You know, I was talking to a young lady earlier, you know, like, it gets good, you know, and we just, hey, we're doing it for good things, you know. We just overshoot the goal somewhere. And that's what I usually do. I overshoot the goal somewhere. You know, I'm so busy trying to make money out there that I just sold me a place out from under me. You know, I sold the house and everything. I sold it, you know, don't need that place to go. Before I had a place to go. Is that beautiful? Right? And I'm running around like a rat in a sewer, right? Trying to get that part of living back together. I said, what I told myself, deluded myself, I'm going to simplify my living. Right? I'm going to get rid of, I'm not going to be the landlord no more. I'm just going to do this and I'm going to do that. And so I just wheeling, dealing, selling stuff. Rather than having preparations of saying comfortable living or having a place. And I know, you know, I know that I'm not going to be out in the cold, but it's uncomfortable where I am. Everything is packed in boxes and in things and packed away and in store, you know. And I don't like that. It's very simple. Although I intended for it to be. You know, my best laid plans. Now, I didn't ask any of you, what should I do? One person did give me a suggestion. He said, if he called you that much headache, get rid of it. So I got rid of it. I followed suggestions. I was supposed to have some follow-up suggestions to go along with it, but I didn't consult with nobody. You know, somebody else asked me just today, you know, when I was up there telling them about, you mean, didn't you have another place? No, I didn't. You know. When you're in the mess, it just don't seem to work out the same way. It's when I can stand back from it, or let you know what is happening, that I can see it better. And I think that's part of the value of, you know, we can see each other as we don't see ourselves. And it becomes very helpful in that respect, that I can always get a view of my addiction, and I have to get back to that first step, that my life is still unmanageable. It is getting better, but it's still unmanageable, and that I can predisposed in some respect to this here sickness inside of addiction. That's all I have.
Yeah. Is there anybody else who would like to share this morning? Hello.
Yeah, my name is Jimmy. I'm a recovered addict.
Hi, Jimmy.
Along the lines that Doug was talking about, you mentioned that sometimes we can find out more clearly what something is by seeing what it is not. One of our pamphlets talks about that in particular. And it lists 4 things that addiction is not. And very simply, I'll just run the top part out. And anybody who has not read this pamphlet could get one right off the table there. These are free for anybody that wants them. Number 1, addiction is not freedom. I think we know that pretty well. Number 2, addiction is not personal growth. If it's anything, it retards it. And addiction certainly is not goodwill. When I came here, I had nothing left, especially as far as goodwill was concerned. I hated everybody, everything, myself more than anything else, I do believe. And above all, addiction is not a way of life. Now, maybe some social users might find it a way of life or a lifestyle that they like, but when it comes to addiction, it certainly is not a way of life, but rather it's a way of death. And it's a way of negation, if I can use that term. So some of the things that we have to do, I believe, at nearly all of our meetings, we touch on it in different ways. And that is, what is our terminology? What do we think addiction is from our experience? Because this seems to be the basis for everything we do. What is our experience as a body? What is my experience as an individual that I can offer that might help somebody else? And these are the things that then finally we say addiction, as we understand it, is a compulsion and an obsession. The impulse that Doug spoke about is only one small part of the addict personality. The addict personality is well known. It's been known to psychologists for years. But we have to study it for ourselves so that we know from the inside what we are. And above that, it's an emotional as well as a spiritual problem. And it seems that when we hit bottom and are willing to do something about the problem that we face, we have hit a spiritual low. I define that for myself. When I reach that point where I would look in the mirror in the morning and I spit at myself because I was not acceptable to me. I could no longer face myself. I cussed myself. I want nothing to do with me, and I couldn't get away from this character who was the addict. And I think these are some of the things that we find out that our terminology suits us best. The compulsion means very simply to us that after having started to use an addictive drug, that I cannot stop. I have to let it run its course. It has to run its cycle. And in the addict, that cycle is a continuous cycle. And it continually gets worse. When we stop and are able to stop when we come to Narcotics Anonymous, no matter what method is used to get us there, we find out that that's about half of the illness. It's gone right there. I don't need anything until I take something. I may want something, but I don't need it. And that need, that urgency, that I can't do without it is gone. And the obsession then is removed by working our steps. Because this brings us to grips with the problem, with powers that we have to find to help ourselves, with ourself, our inner self, to straighten out our life, see what we have to work with, and then our steps as they go along into 7, 8, and 9 take us into relationships with other people on the program, outside the program, our family, our friends, so that we can live a life of freedom, so that we can feel not so much, for me, comfort as ease. I was never at ease all my life. I was never at ease no matter where I went. In my own family, I was not at ease. I was not at ease with my mother, my brothers, my sisters. I was never at ease as I am today. And I think this is it. Then we find out that when we get into the working part of our steps, that these are the daily things that we face that brings us to what Doug was talking about. How did you do this week? What happened this week that maybe you had to think about more than once and get yourself back in the right direction? I shoot angles. I know that about myself, so I have to be careful. I'm always looking for an easy way. I'm always looking for a few other things that might come my way that I would like to have without paying any prices, you know? And I think this is with all part of addiction. And some things that make up addiction, we mentioned the one, impulsiveness, you know? We have that other thing that's known as, we have a certain word for it. If I could just grasp it right now, I've lost it. But inadequate, they call it. Inadequate. I never felt that I really was competent to do anything as much as you were competent to do the same job. I hated competition with individuals because I always felt that I was less than. I would lose. See? So here's this, and then we have that spiritual sensitivity. It's not only as a spiritual sensitivity that we use on the program after we're clean for a while, but we use it in a different way. The old way was, you hurt my feelings, therefore I'm going to use, or therefore I'm going to get even with you. And we didn't realize, we always talk about, well, I have no patience. I had any patience. Patience was a virtue I didn't have. Well, I want to tell you, I was a patient man, even in my addiction. If I was going to get even with you, I'd wait 10 years. I did that. I almost killed a man because of it, you know. If somebody hadn't pulled me off, I'd have been doing time for it, you know. And this is it. So, but above all, I think, was that little voice inside me that we all talk about. I call him that little dictator bastard, you know, inside of me that says to me things like, even now you'll say to me, oh, go ahead. They don't know what the hell they're talking about, you know. Do it your way. Go ahead, try this. You know, you never tried that drug before. Why don't you take a crack at it? Maybe now you can handle it. These things never attack us the same way twice. They always come from a different angle. And I found out that I used to set things up. I say, well, I will do this if that happens. And again, I'm going into that old intellectual bullshit that I've always used. I solve everything mentally and then rest back and say, oh, isn't that nice? It's all solved now. You know, I put no action into it. Now think about what we find in this program, that action really is the magic part of this program for ourselves. What we believe and what we practice. We do it every day to some degree. We come to a meeting. Actually, we come to a meeting like this. As I pointed out to somebody the other night, we perform part of all the 12 steps by coming to a meeting. You know? I reveal myself a little bit to you. You reveal yourself a little bit to me. Sometimes I come to a meeting, I'm down. You can inspire me to try to grow a little bit, a little more each day. And I think this is what we do mostly for each other. It comes back down to the basic thing. We banded together because nothing else seemed to be helping us. We got together with each other because we can do what I can't. And that's it. We can do what I can't do alone. And that's about all I have to say.